I'm not going to waste a bunch of time on preamble this time. Took a little too long to get to it, but obviously I needed some setup considering I'm going to be talking about a ton of Mega Man games and kind of wanted to let you know why. So, Mega Man 2, what many consider to be one of the best Mega Man games, and I mostly agree. It is a massive step up from the original Mega Man, without a doubt. The fact that we have 8 robot masters, the fact that we have a structured Wily castle, the fact that health pickups and energy refills are now unified across the games. This is the design that's going to be used pretty much for the rest of the series, at least in terms of classic Mega Man. And it feels good. This feels a lot tighter than the original Mega Man. It is just immediately evident that they looked at everything that did not work about the original Mega Man or wasn't quite tight enough and fixed it, made it better, introduced a lot of new concepts, and just made a truly fun game. And I could leave it there because people love Mega Man 2. But I don't think it's the end-all be-all Mega Man because there's obviously a lot of aspects to it that work for the player, but maybe not for the game itself. The biggest case in point is Metal Man and his metal blades, the weapon that completely breaks the game. And when I did this playthrough, I actually made it a point to go to Metal Man last. I wanted to see how the game plays without him. And the great thing I have to report is, it's still good. It's still amazing. You can play through each of these levels and not have an issue. There were specific moments where I remembered like, oh man, this is the first time I've actually had to fight this enemy. I couldn't just take them out before they even got anywhere close to me just because of the 8-directional way that you could throw the metal blades. It was very eye-opening in that way. But the thing was, it didn't necessarily make the game harder. It just made me think a little bit more, and I ultimately appreciated the game way more upon doing that. I all of a sudden had to pay way more attention to how the boss strategies work. How do I handle each of these? And many of them, where you could just use the metal blades to take them out with no issue, are way more interesting when you don't have to use that as a crutch. And obviously it's always a choice, but I specifically wanted to limit myself. I didn't want to go in and have just the most powerful weapon and perhaps all of Mega Man right from the get-go. And yeah, as I said, it's a great time. I also have to commend the Robot Masters and their weapons this time around. Obviously you have the metal blades that can just be shot in any direction, but then you have the quick boomerang that just fires out rapid shots and is a lot of fun, and then the bubble lead, which is used for environmental puzzles in Wily's castle. Some of these are really inventive and can lead to a lot of replayability just because if you have a certain ability for a certain level, all of a sudden it becomes a lot easier. For example, if you have the Crash Bomber, then there are certain sections that you can reach in order to get extra power-ups, or maybe even the new E-Tanks, which provides a full heal for Mega Man and makes it maybe a little bit more feasible to beat certain bosses if you don't have their weakness. It makes it so you have to be less perfect this time around. And the other advantage is not all of these Robot Masters will do the massive damage that they did in Mega Man 1. It feels more balanced this time around. And while some attacks will do massive damage to some of these bosses, I have to think of Woodman and his weakness to atomic fire. Specifically, a fully charged atomic fire, it just goes down in 2 shots and is really handy. But you have to know that you can charge the atomic fire, and you wouldn't necessarily know that. There's nothing in the game itself that tells you, hold down the button and you can charge up atomic fire and it'll be an even bigger blast, uses more weapon energy, but does a lot more damage. So there's a lot to be said about the inventiveness this time around with the weapons. Again, just shouting out various examples of how the weapons can make certain sections easier. It really does go beyond the metal blades. There's the Time Stopper with Quickman stage where you can stop those bars of instant death, or the air shooter being able to take out the mechs that the Sniper Joes ride this time around. There's a lot of ideas here and they mostly work. Now, of course, there are some that are maybe not as advantageous, but on the whole, I think this is a great set of weapons and a fun set of Robot Masters. And even better, with the path I chose, I didn't have a lot of the advantages that you would normally get. I didn't have item 1 in order to just fly over the disappearing block section. I had to learn that pattern, and I got it pretty quickly. It wasn't too bad to do. Same for Quickman stage. I could have used the Time Stopper, but I was able to get through that section with little issue in about 2 tries, so I didn't have to worry about using up some of its weapon energy that I wouldn't have for Quickman at the end. The stages in general are just way more inventive this time around and feel better themed to their individual Robot Master. Iceman stage might have been frozen over and you could see frozen palm trees in the background, But with Bubble Man stage, you have waterfalls. You have a water section that you have to watch how high you jump in order to avoid spikes. There's just all kinds of ideas that truly add to the level experience of each of these and make them feel far more unique than the original game. It's pretty much a step up the entire way through for the first half. However, the second half is where cracks start to show, and it's unfortunate because there are aspects of this that I really like. The Mecha Dragon is an iconic boss and can give people a lot of trouble. However, it's also a lead up to one of the bigger problems I have with Mega Man 2 in the modern age, and that's the flashing lights. You defeat a boss and it just flashes like crazy. You really have to be ready for these things because they can just blind you in how they just pop through, and Mecha Dragon might be the worst because it happens every time you hit them. The funny thing is that there's only two bosses in Wily's castle that really give any trouble. The Mecha Dragon, which can be a little tricky when you're first learning it because you could be instantly knocked off and then have to go through the whole thing again. It's a bit of a nightmare, but it's also something that with time you learn. You see the pattern, you know what the weakness is, and it really becomes not much of an issue, much like the Yellow Devil of Mega Man 1. And then there's the robots that come out from the wall that you have to destroy one by one that is easily taken out by the metal blades. The Guts tank, which is easily taken out by the quick boomerang and never becomes that much of an issue. But then we get to the fourth boss, that contraption that you have to use the Crash Bomber on. And unfortunately, I felt the wrath of that stage where I made a poor shot, where I was wanting to look one way and accidentally looked the other for just a second, and that's the way the Crash Bomber went and wasted the shot, so I couldn't beat it in one go. And it was impossible to defeat. No other weapons work against this thing. So you have to die, and then when you restart, you have to farm weapon energy for the Crash Bomber so you can attempt it again. Now the advantage is, any walls you take out during that first attempt, if it's still in the same set of lives, stay gone. So theoretically, if you make enough mistakes and have to do this again and again, you will eventually have more chances to make it happen. But it's also the annoyance of, now I have to farm for weapon energy, now I have to get back there. There's the pressure of making it happen and not missing any of the shots. It's just a poorly designed boss that's meant to waste time unless you do things perfectly the first time around. And unfortunately, I felt the wrath of that with this playthrough. Now, there is one other part of this game that I completely forgot about and got caught off guard by, but before I touch on that, I wanted to talk about the items and how they do add a bit to the game and can certainly make certain sections way easier and even add something to the puzzles of Wily's castle, but I also found myself not thinking about them too much this time around. A lot of times, unless I wanted to get an extra item or it was absolutely necessary, I didn't really have to think about it. I mostly used item 2 for the floating platforms in order to reach what I needed to, and item 3 was just sort of special cases, and item 1 certainly was a special case. Very useful when you can use it, but not really an active thing. So a good idea that is not fully fleshed out, and of course we will see it be fully fleshed out as time goes on. But again, you can still feel the growing pains of the franchise with Mega Man 2. It is not a perfect game. It is a lot of fun, but I did feel the wrath of some of its early designs, namely in how the E-Tanks are treated. I reached Wily and could not remember for the life of me what his weaknesses were. And so I was just taking a lot of damage because unlike the boss fight against Wily in Mega Man 1, the shots you have to dodge this time around feel way more wonky. There were times where I swear I dodged things, but I still got hit. And by the second half, it felt like it was impossible to dodge. There was just no rhyme or reason. And it quickly grew frustrating because I did not know the weakness and I was trying to figure it out. And unfortunately, with the metal blades, they often become a crutch where you think, okay, the metal blades are great against everything. I'll just use the metal blades. And no, that is not a viable strategy. It needs something else. And so you've got to figure out what that is. And unfortunately for myself, I had 2 E-Tanks going into that final battle with Wily. Now, why is that unfortunate? Well, I was still under the impression that it was much like later Mega Man games, where if you lost all your lives and had to use a continue, you still kept all your E-Tanks. In Mega Man 2, that is not the case. So because I was trying to be conservative, figure out the boss, figure out a way to get past it, figure out the weakness, so I could make one good run at it, and use those E-Tanks to facilitate myself when I'm taking damage, instead, I got a game over. I had to refight all the Robot Masters again, And I lost all the E-tanks, meaning I now had to take on Wily in one life, with no healing whatsoever. And it was a nightmare. I took so much longer than before, and this has never happened to me. This is the first time I've ever had this issue, mainly because in the past when I did play this, I looked up the weakness, so I didn't have to worry about it. But with me going in fresh and not looking up what was weak to what, unless I already remembered it, I was stuck dead in the water and had to just sort of figure it out and try to guesstimate what seemed to be doing better than others. And unfortunately, I had to use my Twitch chat in order to figure out the final set, because I thought one thing was working the best and it turned out no, it was doing better, but it wasn't the best, and I just didn't have the life to hold on to it. So I was stuck there for quite a while, and it really soured the experience for me. And I can just imagine a first-time player thinking, oh man, why didn't I use those E-tanks? It felt devastating. That being said, you get to the final level where you fight the alien Wily, and it's easy as pie because you have bubble lead. It's not an issue whatsoever. And it was like, just got past that hump and I was done. I was all set to go. So it's just one of those things. It's just one of those things where certain aspects can really hold you back. But in replaying Mega Man 2 and thinking about it critically, 2 was never my favorite Mega Man, but I always recognized it as a good one. And that's still true here. You can see how it improves upon Mega Man 1, but you can also see how it doesn't quite reach the heights of later Mega Man games. Later Mega Man games have many more tools and are better designed in how they treat the player. But Mega Man 2 was one of the ones to do it first and do it well, and I think that's why it's so loved. I completely understand why people enjoy it. I was certainly enjoying myself too. It is a favorite. But I don't think it's the end-all be-all, and I'm curious which one I will fill out of the classic series that is the end-all be-all, without getting into the trap of like, 4 is just repeating what 3 did, or 5 is just repeating what the others did, and you get into that rut if it's just the same thing. I really want to look at what makes each one unique and how they improve upon themselves, and truly get into what I feel is the best one. So that's my sort of goal for the Mega Man Classic series. Otherwise, presentation is better. The music is amazing, bar none. Better soundtrack than 1. I love 1's soundtrack, but 2 blows it out of the water. It still holds up today. Well worth playing, well worth enjoying. But what are your thoughts on Mega Man 2? Let me know in the comments, and thank you for continuing to join me on this adventure through every single Mega Man game. And if you especially enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing to Good Vibes Gaming, hitting the like button, and ringing that bell. We also have a Patreon at patreon.com/gvgaming with plenty of extra perks. Until next time, bye.